Okay, so to get ready for our quiz today, we're going to do 2 of each type of questions. And those each type of questions, there's 4 different types, so these will be 8 questions total. So the first one is factoring using the greatest common factor. This is how our quiz is set up. There's easy ones and a little bit harder, and then just variables. So that's greatest common factor. So first we have to find our greatest common factor between these 2. So to continue with box method, because box method went really well yesterday in class, you put each term inside your box. So it doesn't matter which. Oh, thank you. Close the screen. I had no idea. So if you're copying it down, just question 1, 6x minus x squared. Your instructions are to factor. Totally thought you could see me. That's funny. So each term is going to go in this box. So 6x minus x squared. This is greatest common factor. We'll get to the calculator. Not there quite yet. So 6x and negative x squared. What is in common with those 2? 6x and negative. Remember, if it's not written, there's a 1 there. This one has 2 x's. This one has 1x. So we can still do our factors, 1 and 6, 2 and 3, and then 1x. And negative 1x squared is just 1 and 1. That's the only thing that multiplies 1. And then there's 2 x's. So your greatest common factor is 1, and then they have 1x in common. Because to be in common, they both have to have it. So 1x is your greatest common factor. So 1x times what gives you 6x? 6. 1 times 6 gives you 6. And then 1 times what? I'm going to break this into 2. 1 times what gives me negative 1? A negative. And then there's an x here, and there's 2 x's here. So we need 1 more x. That's like the hardest part, I think, is the variables. So since we have an x already, 1x times negative 1 would just be negative 1x. But we need 2 x's, so I need to add another x here. So x times x is x squared. So your answer, make sure when you plug in your answer, oh my goodness, it's an awful box. Your greatest common factor goes out front, and then what's left over goes on the inside. 6 minus 1x. Question 2. 2 terms go into your 2 boxes. We're doing the greatest common factor. And we need to find the greatest common factor between 32 and 40. Greatest common factor between 32 and 40. Greatest common factor between 40 and 32. So you can do it with the calculator or without. So with the calculator, hit the house button, home. There's a button on the calculator that's a house. So if you click that button, the house button, then you can go calculate. And if all of this annoys you, you can get rid of it, but it's not doing anything. None of that hurts. And you're looking for GCD, greatest common divisor. You can type it in, GCD, on the bottom, or you can do menu, number, greatest common divisor, which is 5. Menu, number, greatest common divisor. And then you have to put a comma in between those two numbers. So we're doing 40 and 32. So my greatest common divisor between 40 and 32 is 8. Oops. Sorry, I had it open. So it's 8. So you can't use the variables. You'll have to look at the variables themselves, like individually. But the numbers itself, you can do the greatest common divisor. And if you're at home, there's a website you can use to do the greatest common divisor. Or you can sit here and make the list. 1 and 40, 2 and 20. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 and 10. 5 and 8. 6 doesn't go into 40. 7 doesn't go into 40. 8's my next number. That's all your factors. I'm trying to go quick. 1 and 30. 2 and 16. 3 doesn't go into it. 4 and 8. 5, no. 6, no. So my greatest number is 8. So if you're going to not use calculator, except like a scientific calculator, you'll have to make all your factors and choose the biggest number they have in common. And then we're dividing. 8 times what gives you 40? Or 40 divided by 8. What's 40 divided by 8? 5. Yep, and there's an x. 4. 32 divided by 8 is 4. Or if you like multiplication over division, 8 times 4 gives me 32. So going from the outside in, you're multiplying. Going from inside out, you're dividing. Okay. How do I get 4? There's 2 different ways. Do you like multiplying or dividing better? So 8 times what gives you 32? 4. But if you can't, if like that's not an easy thing to think about, you can do 32 divided by 8, and your calculator will give you 4. So either way, greatest common factor goes in front. And then in parentheses, 5x and 4. Make sure it's a positive 4, so make sure you put your plus sign in front of it. We're going to turn in these notes, so make sure you're taking them down. If you're watching the video, pause the video, make sure you write everything down. Not like all this, but like all the numbers. The question and the work it out. That's it. Questions on these two? Go back for a second. You sure? Oh. All right, so 3. Still factoring, still greatest common factor. But now it's all letters. So we have 2 terms, so I have 2 boxes. X to the 5th, y. X cubed, y to the 4th. Now, a lot of exponents have really been tricking people, but x to the 5th just means you have 5 x's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. X to the 3rd means you have 3 x's. 1, 2, 3. So how many do they have in common? How many x's do these 2 terms have in common? Yes, 3. It is your smallest exponent. So 5 and 3, 3 is the smallest. But 1 in common, 2's in common, 3 in common. So they have 3 x's in common. And then we do the same thing with y. So this one has 1 y, this one has 4 y's. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many do they have in common? 1. So what's in common gets pulled out. Again, it's the smallest exponent. So my smallest exponent for y is 1. My smallest exponent for x is 3. I'm going to rewrite that just a little bit different. So we had 5 x's, 1 y, 3 x's, 4 y's. We said 3 x's are in common. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then with y, we said 1 y is in common. So I have 3 x's coming out of x to the 5th. How many am I going to have left over? How many is left over in this term? 2. What about y's? How many y's are left over in this term? So there's 1 y in here. I took 1 y out. None. None. See, all my y's are circled. There's nothing left in that. My next term, I have 3 x's here, and I took 3 x's out. How many do I have left? 0. 0. There's no x's left. I took them all out. They're all circled. But how many y's do I have left? I had 4. I took 1 out. 3. And if you look here, I didn't circle 3 of my y's. Should be writing this down. So your Gray's common factor goes up front, and inside goes okay. All right, try that one. How many x's can you take out? How many y's can you take out? This has 1x, 1 y, 3 x's, 2 y's. That's question 4. Okay, how many x's do these two terms have in common? 1. Your smallest exponent is 1. So just 1 x comes out. What about y's? How many y's do they have in common? Again, 1. Yes. There's only 1 y here and 1 y here. So I have a 1x, I took it out. I have 1 y, I took it out. But you have to put something on top. You can't just leave it. Not x. but 1. Yeah, so 1 has to stay on top. Candy, take the hood off. Why don't you take notes? Okay, and then in this last one, you had 3 x's. I took 1 out. How many was left over? 2. I had 2 y's. I took 1 out. How many are left over? 1. So there's my answer. Remember, when you factor, the answers are on the outside. When you multiply, the answers are in the inside. And if you have 2 terms, you have to separate it either with a plus or a minus. Here's your answer. Here's your answer. There's a lot of numbers and variables up there, so make sure we get our right answers. All right, perfect square trinomials. I know it's 2 terms, but you're putting it into a 4 box, like we were doing yesterday. And we have to do our magic X. Let me set it up here. So remember, I want ax squared in the first box, c in the last one. We need to know what multiplies to ax. I'm sorry, multiplies to ac and adds to your b. And for difference of squares, you have ax squared plus bx plus c. Ax is negative x squared. Negative x squared. C is always just the constant, just the number. And on these types of questions, you're always trying to add to 0 because b is 0 because there's no just x term. So on difference of squares, you're trying to add to 0 because b will equal 0, always. Sure, it'll help you because it'll help you remember that this is 0. So we're trying to add to 0 and multiply. So we have to multiply to AC. So what is A in this question? A is always the number with x squared. So what's the number with x squared? Almost. Take the sign with it. Negative 1. So A is negative 1. And what is C? Positive. What'd you say? 25? Yeah. So we have to multiply that. So what's negative 1 times 25? Yeah, negative 25. All right, so what numbers multiply to 25, negative 25, and add to 0? It's negative 25, because we had to multiply A times C. What multiplies to A times C? But when you look at your factors, you're just looking at it positive 25, if that's what you mean. There's just too much on here, isn't there? Pull this over. Do that in a different question. So it multiplies to 25. If you don't know, this is when you take your calculator out and do 25 divided by 1. 25 divided by 2. Decimal. 25 divided by 3. Decimal. 25 divided by 4. Decimal. 25 divided by 5. Oops. 5. So 5 and 5. If you're using the calculators I just gave you, which I want you to, 25 divided by 5 is 5, but 25 divided by 2, it gives you a fraction. And the fraction is the same thing as the decimal. So you can't use that. So which one will subtract to 0? Which one has a difference of 0? 5 and 5. But to multiply to a negative, one of them has to be negative. You're adding to 0, so it doesn't matter. They should be the same. When you go to put these two numbers in your box, make sure you do negative 5x, positive 5x. It doesn't matter which one you make negative, just that it has an x with it. So these are the ones we added to our box. So negative x squared and 5x, what do they have in common? They both have x's. Negative x squared and negative 5x, both have x's. That's very repetitive today. And then x times what gives you 5x? 5. Because this is a 1. So 1 times what gives you 5? And then 1 times what gives you negative 5? And I messed up because that's a negative. Hold on, something's wrong. Negative 5 times 5 would give me negative 25, right? So that's not right. The negative doesn't go there. It should go here. Because when I said, what do they have in common? We said they both have an x, but we forgot to say they both have a negative. So in common, they both have a negative and an x. And then 5 times 5 gives me 25. And then when you factor, your answers are on the outside. 1x plus 5 and negative 1x plus 5. All right, 3 more, and then I'll only do need to. I can do the individual help before you take your quiz if you're having trouble with just one type and everybody else wants to Just start on that quiz. So here's the format we're trying to get: x squared. This is the term with x squared. That goes in the top of my box. My box is too little. That's a big number. A bigger box. Okay. What multiplies to AC and we can identify A, B, C. That's what I should be doing every time. So multiplies to AC and adds to B. So first, what is A? Just the number. Just the number. Because x squared. A is just the number in front of x squared. B is the number in front of just x. Nothing. There is no number, just x. So that's why I keep saying it adds on these, it adds to 0. But that's why, because there is no term with just an x. There's one with an x squared, and there's one that's the constant c. But there's no just x. This is going to be an extremely large number. 121 times 64. Extremely large. 121 negative. There's my negative sign. Times 64. $7,744. 7,744. I'm doing this because this is possible to see on, like, I pulled this from a Delta Math. So, like, you could get something that big. So I want to make sure we know how to do this. I know the type of questions on the quiz. Does that make sense? Okay. Because everybody gets their own, like, type of, like, you'll get the same type of questions, but 2 different questions. And she'll get 2 different questions. But it's the same type. Okay. So how we multiply to negative 7,744. 7,744. I'm gonna make this list. 17744. It is tedious. 2. 2. 3, 8, 7, 4. 3 doesn't work. 4, 1, 9, 3, 6. 7, 7. Did I do 5 already? Nope. 6. I get decimal. 7. Decimal. 8. Ooh. Okay, I need to subtract these and get 0, right? So I'm not anywhere close to 0. I'm gonna skip a few numbers and start trying at like 20. Nope, 7744. Oh, I didn't send it. Sorry. Okay. There's an easier way to do this. You want to know what it is? It only works for difference of squares. I hate teaching you only one method, but this is ridiculous. So if you take the square root of 744, square root of 7744, it's 88. 88 times 88 is 7744. And those are our numbers. Right? We would, I was still working. I don't feel like working that hard. So if we came back here and did negative 25 or 25, you could also do 25, the square root of 25 is 5. Before I messed it up. So that's the shortcut in how to do these. You take the square root of that number. But it only works for perfect squares. So perfect squares is that square root. Perfect squares. Okay. So we get 88. Don't forget to put an x with it. And 88. Don't forget to put x with it. One of them has to be negative to add to 0. Where should I put my negative? Doesn't matter. Here? Okay. Doesn't matter. If you put it here, then the factor is just going to be negative up here. If you put it down here, it would still be equal. Okay. Calculator time. 121 and 88. What is your greatest common factor between those? Because I don't feel like doing the factors right. So in your calculator, menu, number, greatest common divisor, and you're doing 121 and 88. $11. And then they also have two other things in common. What else is in common there? Your negatives in common and an x in common. Yes. Okay, 121 and 88. Greatest common factor, divisor. 121 and 88. Didn't we already do this? Hold. They don't have a negative in common. This one's negative, this one's positive. They do have an x in common.
What is x? Oh, what is the one?
This one?
You're right, it's just one.
Here.
Like this was there was a negative x.
Like that?
Like is that in those amounts?
That would be greatest common factor. If that's the case, then we'll be doing these greatest common factor. So yes, there is going to be an example like that or a question like that, but not in this section. Okay. 11x times what gives you 88? So 11 times what gives me 88? Say it. 8. And it already has an x, so I don't need another x. If you have trouble thinking of that, use division. What's 88 divided by 11? Yeah, sorry. Negative 11 times what gives you negative 88? Again, 8. And this is the hardest question you could possibly see. Oops, that was negative. Okay. All right, 2 more easier questions. 2 more easier questions. Let's do our magic egg. So we're doing this review. We're turning it in. You should be writing that with me. You have 4 different questions on the Magic X today. So hopefully this will be a really good quiz grade. You want to know what multiplies to 100 and adds to 10? I mean 20. Is what?
Wait.
Adds to 20.
Yeah, I have to do multiplication.
100 divided by 1. Nice. 1 and 100. 2 times 50. You're right. I'm just going to write it out for my people at home. 3 is a decimal. 4, 25. 5 and 20. 6 decimal. 7 decimal. 8 decimal. 9 decimal. 10 factor. So 10 and 10. So 10 times 10 multiplies to 100, and when you add them, I get 20. So that's your answer. 10 and 10. That's it. The quiz is a little easier than yesterday's. What? All right, let's do another one. It gets harder. I saw it was a lot harder for people when I do it negative. So you want to know what multiplies to 60, negative 60, and adds to negative 4. So you need to write down all your factors of 60. All your factors of 60. 2. So you'll do 60 divided by, it's always 1. It's always the first one. If you don't write down 1, and it is, everyone always forgets that one. So, but 2 is a factor. 2 and 30. 2 and 30. But that doesn't have a difference of 4, so we have to keep going. 60 divided by 3. 3 and 20. Not yet. We gotta keep going. 60 divided by 4. 4 and 15. 60 divided by 5. 5 and 12. 60 divided by 6. 6 and 10. 60 divided by 7. decimal, 60 divided by 8, decimal, 60 divided by 9, decimal, and 60 divided by 10 is 6. And we already have 10 up there, so we can stop. Because then the next factor is 12, 15, 20. So those are all your factors. Now, if this is a negative number, you want the difference of these. So which of these factors have a difference of 4? So if I subtract them, I get 4. 6 and 10. So if I subtract them, I get 4. If I subtracted these, I get 7, I get 11, and so on and so forth. Like the numbers are getting bigger. So you're right. So 6 and 10 have a difference of 4. So you know your numbers are going to be 6 and 10, but one of them has to be negative to multiply to a negative and add to a negative. Yes. So let me say this kind of slowly. To add to a negative, you need the bigger number to be negative. So I need my bigger number here to be negative. So 10 is bigger than 6, so that's why I made 10 negative. And you can always check 6 times negative 10 is negative 60. 6 plus negative 10 is negative 4. So that is 2 of every single type. So 2 of every single type of question for your quiz today.